So yesterday featured one of, if not the biggest trade of the entire offseason, involving 3 players and a late-round pick swap. But one of these teams were not done making trades because they somehow were able to acquire a tight end that retired from the NFL and didn't even play last year at all. It's been an eventful couple days, so in today's video, I'll break down everything that went on and try to figure out who won this trade, if anyone at all, right after. Typically, this time around the NFL offseason is very slow, boring, and no news. Well, yesterday, notifications went crazy with announcements of a pretty massive trade that went down between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins. It was weird because this trade was announced one piece at a time. So at first, it looked like the trade was going to be the Dolphins moving on from Jalen Ramsey straight up for Minkah Fitzpatrick of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I didn't honestly love that for the Steelers at first, but then more updates came in, and I do like this a lot better now. First, here's the full details, and then I'll get into why I do like this, at least for the Steelers. They received Jalen Ramsey, talking about Pittsburgh, tight end Jonnu Smith as well, and a 2027 7th-round pick, while the Dolphins are getting safety Minkah Fitzpatrick back in Miami, as well as a 2027 5th-round pick. Adam Schefter reported that the Steelers are taking on the bulk of Ramsey's contract for this year, with Miami paying just $3 million of it. And actually, Ramsey is also getting a little pay bump as the Steelers are increasing his 2025 salary up to $26.6 million, which is a $1.5 million raise. Both he and Jonnu have been involved in trade rumors for the better part of this offseason, so those two being on the move isn't really all that surprising, but both of them being traded to the same team is pretty wild, and then I really didn't expect Minkah Fitzpatrick to be traded away at all. He's 2 years younger than Ramsey, turns 29 in November, and has 2 years left on his contract, with about $15.5 million due for this year, and then over $17.5 million for 2026. That's not bad at all for a player many considered to be one of the best safeties in the game. Minkah was drafted 11th overall by the Dolphins back in 2018, but was traded to the Steelers in just his second season after being frustrated with how he was being utilized in the defense. Well, 6 years, 5 Pro Bowls, and 3 All-Pro selections later, he finds himself back in the city where he started his career. Minkah isn't who he once was, dipping in his overall grade and coverage grade the last couple of seasons, but hey, Jalen Ramsey isn't who he once was either, but his 2024 season was at least better than 2023. That was cut short by that knee injury. I still think Minkah has some left in the tank for sure, as does Ramsey, who is still an impact player at a premium position on the defense. Pittsburgh also brought in Darius Slay on a 1-year deal, so now they've got 2 vets to pair alongside Joey Porter Jr., their 2nd-round pick from 2023. As for their plans at safety, they gave Deshaun Elliott a 2-year extension just a couple weeks ago, and they also brought in former Chiefs and Browns safety Juan Thornhill on a 1-year deal, so they appear to have their secondary sorted out. Now they just need to lock up TJ Watt to a new extension. He held out all of training camp and minicamp as he seeks a new contract, but after yesterday's trade, Adam Schefter reported that his sources believe interest from other teams in TJ Watt is going to increase. The Steelers, though, have been adamant time and time again that they intend on Watt finishing his career in Pittsburgh, and they've been in communication with him as they try and negotiate a long-term deal. Tom Pelissero kind of echoed that, saying the Steelers have no intention of trading Watt and their focus remains on extending his contract. I will say, if you are truly in win-now mode, which has been evident by the fact of all the people they've brought in, you brought in a bunch of veterans, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, among others. If you do all that, but trade away your best player on defense, that goes against the mentality of trying to win it all quite a bit. So I would personally be surprised if TJ Watt gets traded, although I was 0% surprised Ramsey got traded. After all, he and the Dolphins mutually agreed to seek out a trade back in April, and while it was reported that the preferred landing spot for Ramsey was to be with a West Coast team, a team that was also a contender, it seems like Ramsey thinks the Steelers might not be a warm climate by any means, but could be a contender this year. On top of moving on from Ramsey, though, the Dolphins also shipped out tight end Jonnu Smith. I do not like this one as much for the Dolphins because Jonnu Smith, yeah, he wanted a pay raise after coming off of a career year, 88 catches for nearly 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, but for whatever reason, the Dolphins were reluctant to give him that extension, and so they shipped him off to Pittsburgh. He was their 2nd leading receiver last year, so this is a tough one for me to see in Miami's offense. For Pittsburgh, though, I like it. They expressed interest in Jonnu back in late May, and now that it's a done deal, they wasted no time in extending him. He reportedly signed a 1-year, $12 million extension with them immediately upon the trade. He and Pat Freiermuth will now make for a very solid tight end duo, plus Jonnu gets to reunite with Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. This is now the third team that they've been on together. They overlapped in Tennessee for a couple years, then Arthur was the head coach of the Falcons in 2023 when Jonnu set his previous career high in both catches and yards, and now they are together in Pittsburgh once again. Steelers fans have been calling for the team to bring in a viable number 2 receiver, and while Jonnu Smith isn't technically a wideout, he has a good chance to be their second most productive pass catcher behind DK Metcalf. So now that he's in Pittsburgh, what the heck are the Dolphins going to do at tight end? Their next man up behind Jonnu is Julian Hill, who through his first 2 seasons in the league has caught a combined 18 passes for 148 yards and 0 scores. They didn't draft one, and while they did sign Pharaoh Brown in free agency, he's not known for his pass-catching abilities either. Well, this is where a rather surprising trade made today comes into play. Early this morning, it was announced that Miami made a trade with the New York Giants for tight end Darren Waller, who was technically retired and didn't play at all during the 2024 NFL season. The reasoning for that at the time was believed to be twofold. Waller retired after the 2023 season because he wanted to focus more on his rap career, but he also experienced a health scare in November of 2023 where he was struggling to breathe and spent 3.5 days in the hospital unable to stand up, use the bathroom, or feed himself. However, the nature of the illness was never revealed from what I could find, and he did play again after that season following the incident, so I don't really know. I will say this, it seems like he was potentially done playing before that incident though, because he said this in a recent podcast back in June, and the game he's talking about was way before his health scare near the end of the season.
I knew I was retiring when we played in Buffalo. We were running like this counter lead running play, and I'm kind of like leading through the hole like I'm a fullback. I sit down on the sideline after like a drive where we ran like 3 times, and I'm like, what the am I doing with my life? I'm out here playing fullback. I don't even want to do this anymore.
With all that being said though, it looks like Waller had a change of heart, telling the Giants he wanted to return to the NFL, but only if he could play for the Miami Dolphins. I'm not really sure why it was the Dolphins or nobody, but it is a very warm climate in comparison to New York. There's also no state income taxes, and even though he's made over $40 million in his NFL career, I'm sure part of that reason is to make some more money. After all, with all due respect, I don't think the hip-hop music he was making was paying the bills. Well, the Giants still held on to Waller's rights, so they probably figured why the heck not and wanted to at least get something out of him. So they granted his request and were able to send Waller and a conditional 2027 7th-round pick to Miami in exchange for a 2026 6th-round pick. Something is better than nothing, I guess. Meanwhile, for Waller, he gets a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million. I'm sure there's plenty of incentives built into that to protect the Dolphins, but this is a bit of a risky move for Miami. To go from Jonnu Smith to Darren Waller, who didn't play at all last year, is a tough one for me. Sure, they save a decent amount of money by moving on from both Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, but at the end of the day, how much of a downgrade will Waller end up being than Jonnu? Waller had 2 incredible years with the Raiders, 2019 and 2020, but he has since battled with injuries, a knee injury in 2021. He had a nagging hamstring injury, causing him to miss 13 games over 2022 and 2023. The Raiders then dealt him to the Giants in 2023 for a 3rd-round pick, but that hamstring injury limited him to just 12 games, and he officially retired that offseason after catching 52 passes for 552 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, we'll see if the soon-to-be 33-year-old tight end can even produce what he was able to in 2023 with the Giants. The Dolphins still have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but Jonnu was actually their 2nd leading pass catcher last year, so no matter how you look at it, the Dolphins downgraded at tight end, got a decent player in Minkah, but are still reportedly looking for more cornerback help after moving on from Ramsey. That's why if I had to look at this from both sides, I do think the Steelers won the trade overall and will be better for it. Will they be good enough to edge out the Ravens or the Bengals in their division? Great question, but impossible to know and highly unlikely, at least beating out the Ravens. It was kind of a close race last year, at least between those 3 teams. Baltimore had a couple wins over the other 2, but it was pretty close by the end of the season between the Bengals and the Steelers. So the AFC North this year should be a pretty interesting division to follow. As for the Dolphins, they aren't winning their division. The Bills are going to lock that one up. So all in all, lots of trades went down, but I'm not sure it's enough to help either of these teams make a push to win the division, let alone make the Super Bowl, even though it appears the Steelers are really trying to do all they can to capitalize on the fact that they have Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal. But hey, let me know what you think on these trades and how you feel it helps or doesn't help the teams involved in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.